There's a deadly cancer cluster in Houston, Texas that no one is talking about. Imagine discovering your community, the home you lived in, all your neighbors are actually slowly getting poisoned by the neighborhood. Today, I'm gonna talk about the Houston 5th Ward Cancer Cluster, and I'll uncover the shocking truth about the contamination, the health impacts, and what's being done right now. And if you are affected, what you can do. This was discovered in 2019, but it was kind of just swept under the rug and hidden during the pandemic and didn't get media attention until 2021 and 2022. But let's rewind and see how this whole 5th Ward cancer cluster even started. This goes all the way back to 1899, where the Southern Union Pacific Railroad used to treat their railroad ties with creosote, which is a chemical that is used as a wood preservative to prevent rotting and termites. However, creosote is distilled from coal tar, which is made up of over 200 hydrocarbons, which are carcinogenic to humans. The creosote waste materials were put in unprotected disposal pits, which was then buried underground, and over time, it leached out into the soil, and it leached down until it hit the groundwater plume, and it spread out over the entire area. It wasn't until 1984 when the EPA, or the Environmental Protection Agency, finally all but banned the use of creosote, and shortly after, Southern Union Pacific Railroad stopped using creosote. In 1997, Union Pacific Railroad acquired and merged with Southern Pacific Railroad, and it was a $5.4 billion acquisition. But that also meant they took over all responsibility of whatever Southern Pacific Railroad had done, especially at the 5th Ward site. The exact substances, the creosote and the dioxins that came along with it, are terribly dangerous to humans. Even all the way back in 1991, the Houston Chronicle had reported that 8 out of 19 babies born within a few blocks of that dumping site had birth defects. And there are countless stories of residents and families that have lived and grown up near that dumping site having health issues, cancer, and a lot of medical problems. It kept going on for decades, and the residents didn't really know what was causing them to get sick. And it wasn't until 2019 when the Texas Department of State Health Public Services officially announced the 5th Ward area as a cancer cluster. They declared this because statistically, they found it significant higher rates of cancer for those that lived within a few block radius of the Union Pacific Railroad compared to the rest of Houston and the rest of Texas. You're probably thinking that the city and Union Pacific Railroad would do everything they can to help clean up and fix this mess. However, you couldn't be further from the truth. The city of Houston estimated that it would cost $25 million to relocate all the residents and buy out the land around the dump site, and they asked Union Pacific Railroad and the EPA to help step in and pay for the cost. However, Union Pacific Railroad declined and said they were waiting on the EPA reports to determine if they have to take action or not. This dragged on for 4 years until finally in July of 2023, Mayor Sylvester Turner created a voluntary relocation plan, and they allocated $5 million of city money to this plan where residents living in that few block radius around the dump site could voluntarily relocate, and the $5 million would help go to residents to help them move and pay for the first few months of rent in the new place that they live in. However, Mayor Turner finished his term in December of 2023, and in January of 2024, the new mayor, John Whitmire, decided to put a pause on the relocation plan. He instead later on allocated $2 million of that $5 million to the Houston Land Bank to buy out the land that was contaminated. In early 2024, the EPA finally began testing. They tested the soil, the groundwater, and the soil gas in a several block radius around the railroad tracks. For soil sampling, they would dig holes about 6 inches deep and then take that soil in a bag to the lab to analyze it. They sampled 20 public locations around the railroad tracks, including bus stops, public parks, roadway medians, and other general public spaces. They also did residential screenings to the residents at their private property and sent the results directly to the owners. For the 20 public locations, 14 came back with no exceedances. However, 6 locations did come back with an exceedance of 1 or more toxins. However, the EPA said the results indicated that there is no risk for someone just waiting at the bus stop or crossing the street or visiting the park due to the low levels of contamination. You can see here on this chart that Boyce Dorian Park had the most exceedances, with 5 different pollutants or contaminants exceeding the safe levels recommended by the EPA. But what's more concerning is that Dogan Elementary School has benzopyrene exceeding more than double the recommended limit by the EPA. And this is affecting our young children who are more susceptible to these cancer-causing chemicals. So you can see here on this map the initial focus area around the railroad tracks where they did soil sampling. You can see the different zones and when the results were mailed to the owners this year. The next step was a vapor intrusion investigation. Now, vapor intrusion is when a volatile chemical that's in the soil or groundwater rises up in the form of gas and enters the buildings and gets trapped inside the building. So volatile chemicals are chemicals that evaporate very easily and become a vapor in the air. And a common one is gasoline. And in this graphic here, we can see how vapors in the soil and the groundwater can come up through the dirt and enter your house through a crack in the foundation slab or through your sewer line, or can come out through the road. This table is the results of the vapor intrusion investigation. As we can see for the creosote-related chemicals, it's actually not that bad. There's only 1 or 2 exceedances in the groundwater, and in the sanitary sewer, just 1 exceedance. Looking at the soil gas, it's actually very low and almost no exceedances. However, the headspace of the sewer lines, which is the air or the gas above the liquid, the water of the sewer line, you're seeing more exceedances. You see in the sanitary sewer, 2 out of 17, 4 out of 17 for naphthalene, and in the storm sewer, you're seeing more exceedances as well. And the most concerning one is there's a lot of naphthalene, which is a very carcinogenic and toxic chemical. So as of today, July 2025, the EPA has finished all their initial sampling. Right now, they're determining if either 1, they need to do more sampling or expand the initial focus area into more neighborhoods, or 2, send a report to the city of Houston either stating A1, there is no need for remediation, or 2, here's the areas that need remediation, here's a remediation plan. Now, just a few months ago, I actually set up a meeting in person with the lead investigator for this project with the EPA. I went out to the 5th Ward and sat down one-on-one with him and went over everything. He went over everything that was done in terms of sampling and testing and showed me the same results that you can find on the website. He said they were wrapping up final testing as they had to retest some samples that got corrupted during the transit to the laboratory. He mentioned they should have a final determination sometime at the end of 2025 or early 2026. So besides the health impacts, let's talk about the economic impacts. As you all know, I do real estate and I am a real estate developer, and I actually do have land inside that initial investigation zone that has been affected. Now, 5th Ward is a prime and desirable real estate location due to its proximity to downtown and to the new East River project. If you aren't aware, the East River project is a $2.5 billion project that is already underway in the 5th Ward area. It spans over 150 acres and they started construction in 2021. There's going to be a lot of things there. Luxury apartments, office space, parks, a golf course, restaurants, shopping. So it's a huge development and that entire area is going to grow. That's why I had purchased a lot there in 2023 and I split it into 3 individual lots to build 3 houses for resale or for rent or Airbnb. However, in February of 2024, Mayor Whitmire put a hard stop on all permits and all approval for any new developments inside the initial focus area that the EPA was investigating. I had already paid for plans, for permits, for architects, surveys, soil reports, and everything was basically at the finish line ready for the final stamp of approval when this was announced. So the City of Houston Permitting Department also told me, hey, everything's approved. Just once this hold is lifted, we can approve all your documents, but for now, there's a hard hold on the entire area of the initial investigation. I already had my lot under contract to sell turnkey shovel ready to another builder where I was gonna make a $120,000 profit. But this new hold had killed the deal entirely, and now I'm just stuck sitting on this piece of land in limbo, waiting to see what will happen with the EPA investigation. It does look promising, however, as I looked at the results of the area sampled that was right around my lot and there was no exceedances. So I don't expect my lot to have any issues with the soil being contaminated. So you're probably thinking, how can Union Pacific Railroad get away with this? Well, they're not. There are currently 2 active lawsuits against Union Pacific Railroad. The first one is a private lawsuit from the residents of 5th Ward suing for damages against Union Pacific Railroad. The second lawsuit is a public lawsuit from the City of Houston against Union Pacific Railroad, claiming that they broke a federal law, the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, which states specific ways you have to dispose of hazardous waste. But the bigger issue here is the fact that it almost got no media presence and no one really knew about this cancer cluster report. I remember reading an article in December of 2019, thinking, wow, this is a bombshell report that's gonna go crazy. However, I never saw it on the news, I never saw it on TikTok, on social media. No one was talking about this until 2023, 2024. And in that time frame, a lot of new construction houses went up and a lot of people moved in as renters to that area or bought houses there. So a lot of these residents or renters are feeling scammed in a way or misled by not having the information available about this cancer cluster. So as you can see, the Fifth Ward Cancer Cluster in Houston, Texas is not just a news story. It's a critical public health issue. And it took them 5 long years to take any action, even after the report was published in 2019 by the EPA. If you personally know anyone that's been affected by this, I'd love to hear your story and your perspective of this whole situation in the comments below.